All right. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for what is going to be an exciting conversation with the amazing Mark Walker. He is the 2023 Diversity in Technology Award recipient, and I'm so thrilled for the gems that Mark has to share with all of you. Mark, welcome.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And I mean, it's quite an honor, one, to be honored by this esteemed organization and to really have this opportunity to extend my relationship with NAMIC and support the incredible work that you do.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
So
Thank
thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, I am honored. I was coveting this opportunity to get so many insights from you. I'm excited and curious. And to all our members who've joined us today, you're in for a treat. I have a lot of exciting, personally very curious questions that I want to discuss with Mark. But you all know that this is a highly interactive webinar. Many of you have joined us before. Please put your questions in the Q&A. We will make sure that whatever questions you ask, that we are able to address them in the time that we have. Before we begin, here is an intro on Mark. Go ahead, Susan.
My first thought when I was told that Mark won this award is finally he can get some well-deserved recognition. I mean, Mark prides himself on always not being on camera, not getting too much credit, but we need to make sure that folks know the excellent work that Mark does day in, day out, and he is allergic to recognition, so I'm pretty sure he's not going to be able to get out of this one. Really excited to have Mark stand on stage and receive an award.
I can't think of anyone more deserving. Mark makes diversity and inclusion and equity his day to day with the people he hires, but also he makes it an extra, right? Outside of the work that he does on our team, this is really something that he's committed to. So I feel like it's so well deserved. I'm so happy he's getting it. And I'm super happy to have experienced his leadership and really just like the love and community that I feel is part of his team.
I've had the distinct pleasure of working with Mark Walker for close to 20 years now in a variety of capacities. And I will tell you that Mark is wickedly intelligent, he is incredibly creative, and he's also a fantastic leader. So Mark is responsible for what we call business development and innovation at ESPN. His job is to really identify opportunities that will lead us into the future. How do we create that next-gen sports platform for the future? And he's doing a fantastic job. An element of that is a program that he calls, or we call, ESPN Edge. How do we identify technology? How do we identify capabilities that we believe can accelerate our efforts in the sports media space? And that can be through our world-class technology and product team within ESPN, but Mark was also able to identify the right partners on the outside that can help us accelerate things, and that is ESPN Edge, identifying partners that we can work with that can help us create that next-gen sports experience, and he's done a really fantastic job in that capacity.
Some of the best business attributes that Mark Walker has, he's just a nice guy. I mean, people don't really understand how important it is to be relatable when you're doing big deals. And I like to say all the time that Mark and I don't do deals, we do relationships. And Mark has a great relationship with everyone he does a deal with, both internally and externally to the company.
First of all, just seeing Mark, right, in the position that he's in is inspiring, right, to the rest of us. And it kind of allows you to see what's possible, both on the Disney and ESPN side. But mentoring specifically, I feel like not only does he make time and space to have these important conversations with young people at the company, but he's also a sponsor and a champion. So it's not all about talk, but there's so many people, right, I can think of that have benefited from Mark's leadership and just being seen, being heard, and also having the opportunity to move up or across the company in a way that makes sense for their careers. So I feel like he's not only mentored and had impact, but he also makes sure that he's speaking your name in rooms that you're not in. He's making job opportunities for you, and he's also a connecting tissue for a lot of us.
Wow. Wow, Mark. I've always been a big believer that some of our loudest actions are actually done silently. And I really felt like that embodies what they were saying, but also kind of that very quiet demeanor that you carry. Welcome, welcome. How does it feel to see that video?
Well, I mean, it's a testament to the power of great editing. Because I'm sure nobody actually said anything like that. But anyway, no, I mean, it's tremendously fulfilling. Mostly because I aspire to all the things that people talked about in that video. And through all the imperfections and struggles and aspirations, I feel like maybe I'm achieving a little bit of what I set out to do. So
I
that's quite satisfying. Sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's begin. We could talk so much about your innovations, but one of the beauty of what we do at Namic is allow people to get to know Mark, right? The Mark that has these goals, the Mark that I have a feeling somewhere decided I'm going to be a leader, and this is the kind of leader I'm going to be, either through fire or other experiences that we'll talk about. But let me begin with your career. You've had an impressive career spanning from Yahoo, Disney, and now ESPN, ESPN Bet, right? Can you share some moments that shaped your approach to leadership and how you navigated those in your career transitions?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the watershed moments was when I was first asked to lead um, Yahoo News in North America. Something I really wanted very badly and worked very hard to get. Um, and then I got it. In the morning before I started, I had this big knot in my stomach, and something in the back of my head said, "Oh my God, you are not a journalist. You have no idea, you know, how to oversee, business is really rooted in journalism."
Mhm.
And what I learned through that, somewhat painfully, is sometimes your greatest weaknesses are your superpowers, right? And my weakness was I was not a journalist, and I was surrounded by people, who are editors from New York Times and Los Angeles Times, Chicago. I mean, all of these like legendary newspapers and just really very talented journalists. But I found in a short period of time, I found that um, be, because I knew nothing of journalism, and because I was never ashamed to ask a question, I'd ask questions about the business that people never asked before,
Mhm.
and really challenge some of the base assumptions that we've made. And in that context, is really really useful because if you think about it, so much of what happened when I came to Yahoo News was really based on just kind of re-expressing traditional print journalism on the web. And and ultimately, we found that in order to really evolve the business, we had to break free from all of that. And I was the right leader to do that. And so, for me, that was really transformative because you always look at your gaps and your shortcomings and your weaknesses, and you think they're simply those things. But many, many times they're superpowers, if you really allow them to blossom and you really lean into them. And I leaned into the fact I didn't know journalism, asked all the questions, I blew up all the assumptions. I challenged everything, and I always asked why. Why can't we do this? Why shouldn't we do this? I started an organization called Strategic Editorial, and it was simply because the precepts of traditional journalism didn't allow us to monetize effectively. News was kind of thought of being really challenging to sell to advertisers, but I realized a lot of that was just rooted in the way news had been done traditionally.
Mhm.
And once we broke free from that, and I created a almost parallel path, suddenly very attractive to advertisers, and we were able to build programs that both, withstood the test of journalistic credibility, but were really attractive to our advertising partners. So that's a small example, but that was transformative because I think in every role I took after that, all very different, all addressing very different audiences. Yahoo News, men 55. Disney Interactive Media, girls 12 years old, 11 and 12 years
Mhm.
old who love
Right,
Princess.
right.
ESPN Bet, young men who generally who have an interest in sports, although we are constantly looking to grow both our presence in women's sports and to drive into the affinity that many women have for sports as well. But the and then the extension is kind of know yourself, turn your weaknesses into strengths,
Mhm.
and really know your audience. We never forget them. And I think and I also think there's a certain humility in audience-driven businesses. Um, you have to realize that you're not the audience, and at times, um, in fact, um, if I like something, or I think something's really neat or cool or different or very compelling to me, it's exactly wrong for what we're trying to do. There's a real humility in that, right? To just understand, like, you are not the audience, you know, and to really really separate yourself really from some of your own your own preferences and predilections, and really embrace those of the audience, and particularly as we talk about diversity, embrace those who may not have as much experience as you do, but know a lot more about your audience or your customer.
I really like that. Curiously, for our audience, if I hope you've all had a chance to read Mark's impressive bio, but fundamentally, he's an engineer, right? Mechanical engineer from some of the most prestigious institutions in this country. And somehow down the line, he's talking about news, and you can all hear that going into this entertainment and news industry, something that perhaps I would not have pegged, right? But I learned that reading his bio. And then he transitions to law. Can you tell us about that transition and how that happened, Mark? I'm really curious about that. How did you come from engineering degree, engineering masters? Oh, now I'm going to go to law school.
Well, look, it was a confluence of some not so great things, right? One, um, I was I was in a doctoral program in applied mechanics, which is an extension of mechanical engineering. And I didn't really like my thesis advisor. And one Saturday morning in glorious California sunshine, and I was in the lab, and I realized that every single person in that lab would rather be, deep underground in that lab doing that work and doing that research, um, than being outside in the California sunshine. And at that moment, I realized maybe I just don't have the love. Equally, one thing I'm not entirely proud of is I love school. I loved being in school, and I didn't want to leave. So I started exploring other paths, and I applied to other graduate programs, and I applied to what I thought was just another graduate program, law. It was a very naive thing. I didn't realize that law was this kind of complete separate sort of undertaking. I thought, here's another graduate program, seemed really interesting. I applied. Um, I was accepted, and I was sharing that with a friend, and she said, "Oh my God, you've got to go." And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Law school's really hard to get into, and no one would turn that down," which was an absolute surprise to me. So I went to my thesis advisor and I told him I was going to law school, and he looked at me and said, in classic sort of science engineering fashion, you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel." I just said, "Okay, thank you." And I have to tell you, it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. There's a I'd grown up very much in a world kind of loving math and loving things with certainty and really well-defined outcomes. Um, and engineering kind of built around that. And the analytic framework is, hey, look, here are a whole bunch of things that about this problem. how do you eliminate all the extraneous things so you get to um, a form that's solvable, right? Because there's a book of equations. It's really fascinating. It's probably only about 500 or 600 pages long, and those are literally all the equations that you can solve by hand. Now, obviously, with computer analysis, you can do many, many more things and simulations and all these things. But in analog form, that's it. That's the entire universe of things that you can actually solve. And so then the analytic process becomes, okay, how do you reduce your problem to one of those things that's in those, say, 500 pages? And that's one form of analysis. So when I took my first law school practice exam, I have to tell you, it was an absolute debacle.
Because there's no
because
definitive anything.
because what I proceeded to do was I proceeded to use like an engineer's approach. I eliminated all of the facts that I thought were extraneous, got to the things that I thought were important and core, and provided a single solution. And as you know, and anyone who's studied law knows, that's exactly the wrong thing. What they
Exactly.
want you to do is embrace as many of the facts
Yes.
as possible and create as many alternative outcomes based on those facts as you can. And
Yeah.
so after I, got that cold water thrown on me, thank goodness it was a practice exam. It's like all the lights went on. And I thought that here is a different way of looking at problems, looking at the world. And I just think it provided a very complete tool set of here are different ways to approach problems. And they're almost diametrically opposed. And it's been really helpful to me. As I approach problems, I don't sit there and go, this is an engineering problem, this is a law problem. I think, okay, let's do this by excluding as many extraneous things, see what that looks like. Okay, now let's try to account for everything and see what all the possibilities might be. And so those things, as strange as it sounds, the engineering background and the law background really mesh together beautifully, at least in my career, and in my life.
Yeah, I really am so thankful for that response, because I really think that was the genesis of my question, right? The very technical nature of one aspect of thinking, and then the very broad approach to trying to actually defend each problem you're given to try and make it right, because that's the world we live in. But I can see how that comes together to make you the kind of leader that you are, right? When you're looking at everything everybody just told us on the video, that when you are a very creative, innovative individual, I can see how you would lay those various lenses to thinking very, very broadly about a thing, which sometimes may not really be the kind of stuff we think about engineers, to be very honest, right? They can be, there's a stereotype. Forgive me for all the engineers on the Zoom call, but there can be a stereotype in terms of how they approach things and a level of rigidity towards that. So kudos on that. So now that we know that this is how you approach this innovation, talk to us about some of the most exciting and current developments in ESPN Bet and how it's reshaping the sporting betting landscape.
Well, look, we could go on for hours and hours and hours on that, but look, I mean, my excitement is real, and I hope is palpable because, sports betting in the way I do it is not, personally, is not something that aligns with this perceived history of sports betting, where it's been and what it is, right? I'm not a whale. I'm not somebody who goes out and bets a whole bunch of money. I don't like to lose money. I will bet $1 on something, but that dollar makes makes a consumption of that event infinitely more engaging for me. And when my team wins, it makes it just a little bit more exciting. So I win like $1.25, but, it's not the money, it's the winning. And I think that's to me, that's the compelling part of sports wagering, which is really which I think is somewhat inconsistent with the way many people see it. And I think that's really the opportunity for a company like ESPN to just lean into making sports consumption even more enjoyable than it is. making a sports consumption experience, when your team is losing by 20 points, but there's a 21-point spread, like you're still interested and engaged, right? And I think that's the thing. I mean, the other thing that's particularly exciting about ESPN Bet is if you look across online sports betting and you look across the media landscape, there are very, very few places, and I would argue no other places where you have media of the quality and scale that ESPN has that can potentially be married in a seamless experience to an online sports betting platform in a way that's seamless and engaging and doesn't get in the way and is addressed to the right people at the right time in the right way. And we have that opportunity. And Mike Morrison, who leads that team, is driving into that every day. So I can't talk about everything
Right,
that's on
of
the
course.
roadmap, but I'm very excited about what will happen in our platforms and our environments over the next couple of years.
It's really exciting for me, especially as a football, I mean, what's the word? As a soccer fan. I am a huge soccer fan.
Who's
World
your
Cup.
team? Who's your team?
Oh, so am I gonna make friends or enemies? What's gonna happen here? Do I
You're
have
gonna
to be
make if
careful?
it's football, you're gonna make enemies. Like, that's how it is.
So I'm a huge Arsenal fan. Go Gunners, So
Yeah,
in
no,
the
we're not
British
friends.
Premier
We're
League.
no longer friends because I'm
You
a
see?
I'm a great, I'm a
All
Chelsea
right.
is my
Oh,
passion.
oh my goodness. All
And when
right.
people question my authenticity as a Chelsea fan, first of all, I tell them, I preceded the Abramovich era, so I suffered greatly.
Yes.
And I have a cousin, okay, whose name is Chelsea,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's not by accident. So the love of Chelsea, the fandom runs very deep in my family. As a somewhat of a family tradition that I sadly passed on to my own son in a way that is I'm not entirely proud of, because I can live through the ups and downs, but he can't. I mean, we fortunately we've had a run of very good outcomes, but we've had a tough couple years. The poor kid is just, you know, um, he is painfully unhappy for days after Chelsea have a bad result.
Oh
So
my goodness. Okay. I think we're gonna do another series just on soccer because yes, I I get very excited about these conversations and all the banter that goes on. And yeah, we'll do another one on that. But I
sure.
still I don't hate Chelsea. Let me put it that way so we can go on.
Oh, I
But
hate Arsenal, so I'm sorry. That's where we are.
all right, so as we're talking about this, as you can see, the passions run deep on both sides. I see everybody laughing, right? Let's talk about how this is about engagement, right? This is about really engaging the fans and really enhancing that experience. And every time I think of that deeper engagement, I don't think there are fans to any sport that are more dedicated than soccer because of its global nature and just how entrenched we get into these sports and these teams and the World Cup and all that. So when you're thinking about ESPN and how Edge and how it focuses on cutting edge technology into sports experiences, could you share an example of how ESPN Edge has enhanced that fan engagement, and any upcoming technologies that you could share? You don't have to spill the
Sure,
beans.
sure, sure. I mean, so again, there's so much, but I'll just focus on a couple things.
Yeah.
It's not long ago, Kevin Lopeson team, I think you saw Kevin in the video, who's just done a spectacular job at leading forward, driving into AI. Not so long ago, we started, with our partners in programming and our partners in marketing and creative to really lean into what became volumetric simulcasts of sporting events. So you probably saw last year, we broadcast the London NFL game, but we also we did a volumetric simulcast where the action in live action in real time was carried out in a Pixar environment, a Toy Story environment with Toy Story characters. And it was absolutely phenomenal. And it was such a great way to bring that sport of American football to a younger audience. I think, for quite a while, it was the best performing live event on Disney Plus.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's at a time when, we had Hamilton as a live event and many other things. I think it's since been surpassed by Taylor Swift, not surprisingly, but it went, it was among the leading things. But anyway, that just goes to show like how technology enabled this thing, opened new audiences, made a really special and wonderful experience for kids, and made our partners really happy too. I mean, it was one of those things, just a win all around.
Right.
Advertising partners, audience expansion. Our creative partners within the Walt Disney Company were really pleased because they got to see this new, very high quality expression of their IP and more exposure. So it was just great all around. Very proud of that. Recently, the team has leaned into automated game summaries, which is not to replace real people writing about sporting events, because that could never happen. But what it really does, it allows us to expand our footprint of coverage, right? We, with our programming and acquisitions team, does such an exquisite job of acquiring sports from NCAA and leagues and conferences, but it's really, really hard in the long tail to write about all these things and have coverage of all these things. And this is a way that artificial intelligence has helped expand that. Now, we always have editorial eyes on it, and it's always got to pass that quality bar, but it allows us to drive out a volume of content that's highly relevant to people. Someone who does like some obscure sports, I'm really grateful and highly engaged when that sport has, more in-depth and more expanded coverage than I would expect otherwise. And I think as we move into a world where people expect that level of attention and that level of personalization, we'll be able to deliver that.
Yeah, I really like that. And not to go into the personalization space, but I've found that for the things that I like, I prefer when I'm not fed other things I don't like. In as much as I like that, my sons will come and say, "Have you looked at this and have you looked at that?" Because I can be very insular and get into my sports world and not get exposed to, let's say, badminton, which was happening at the Olympics and was just so exciting. But I'm glad it wasn't as customized, because then I could get to appreciate badminton for the first time and the level of skill that was going there. But I do see that being the trend, being the AI and all the algorithms that are going on every technology piece that I have. They simply need to know that I've seen it twice and I'm interested, and my feed is flooded with that, which has its pros and cons, but I appreciate where you're going in that. So, Mark, as a person whose main job is innovation, what strategies do you use to stay ahead of emerging trends, and especially in technology and innovation? I mean, I feel like that's a heavy title for an industry that's moving at the pace of lightning, literally. So how do you personally get to stay ahead and be in that innovative space and identifying solutions? And what resources, what habits do you have? What do you do? Let us in.
Yeah, my main resource is I have a lot of kids. No, I mean, yeah, no, look, I joke about that, but it is funny. I mean, I just, in some ways, having kids in different age strata, and I have many in different age strata, they give me very direct feedback about what I'm doing and not doing. Yeah, it's a focus group of one, but I know I'm on the right path when my son says, "Hey, that's okay. That's pretty cool." And I'll never get a rave review from him, but something like that. And if he doesn't care about it and he doesn't talk about it, I know like, oh, geez, maybe, we're headed the wrong way. That said, it's, as much as you can read trade journals and, read things on the internet and, get daily updates. I mean, it's really from being in a environment, a network of relationships, where I talk to my colleagues at Imagineering. I talk to my colleagues. We now have a centralized AI team led by Jamie Vorse, and they kind of tell us what's going on. We have conversations. Hey, saw something really cool. I'm like, wow. And they're like, yeah, that might be right for you guys. Have you guys thought about that? So, it's really that's what I love about, the species that we're all part of. It's this social environment that really drives change, really drives innovation, drives invention. For all the techniques and methodologies and everything that people have created, over thousands and thousands of years, that's how we move forward and that's how we innovate. Literally people get together, with Plato and his folks sitting around or water cooler, or, around a fire in Namibia, you come up with great things, through these social interactions and these social connections with other people. We're a collective species. We're better together. We're better connected. We're better communicated.
I love that. Networking, communicating, seeking and soliciting advice, even from your children, is a very good way to get candid feedback. Thank you on that. The video we just watched and the stories that were being told had to do with you being a very inclusive leader, a leader who's focused on DEI. How do you prioritize DEI in your leadership approach?
Well, I mean, in many ways, the D and DI comes very naturally, and I think again, it's about challenging assumptions. One of the people on my team who just has led spectacularly, is someone who doesn't really fit the mold of ESPN. And I remember when we interviewed her, there are two finalists. One person was the captain of the Harvard tennis team and kind of lifetime sports person. And this other person was thoughtful, highly entrepreneurial, was CEO of her own enterprise, and but for ESPN, a non-traditional choice, right? Because a lot of people many people here have a background as athletes. Some at very, very high levels. I mean, I have more D1 athletes on my team than I can, count on one hand, right?
Wow.
And that's a remarkable thing because those very
Yeah.
special people, have competed very, very high level, but that's not the only answer. That's not the only solution. The Thinking differently and broadly about who can bring value to the team. And the thing I really believe, and I learned this from Jimmy Pitaro, is you've got to have an infrastructure for diversity. That gets expressed as inclusion, but inclusion is a very soft and general term. I mean, you have to build an infrastructure. Just as a train cannot run if you don't lay down tracks, you have to build infrastructure. And for him, that infrastructure is discuss, debate, decide, align. And what that is a process that we go through as a leadership team where all opinions and voices are heard. And the reason we're able to do that is because we're all committing to, once the decision's made, we're all committed to alignment. There are no outliers. Once we decide what we're going to do, decide which path is the best path, right? We all assiduously trod down that path. And I think that's that infrastructure is a thing that really activates diversity. And once you activate diversity, then people really begin to value it because then they understand how it operates. I think just having diversity for diversity's sake, having a bunch of people around the table, yeah, that's great. But you have to actually have discipline around creating an infrastructure that supports the virtues of having different perspectives and different experiences.
That's amazing. I saw Amy just quote that because, for quite a while, as businesses and different sectors have responded to diversity, we do know that at least 4 years ago it was very reactive, right? And that's okay. If that's what spurs action or the beginning of something, that's okay. But what we've begun seeing is, for those that didn't invest in creating that infrastructure, that long-term strategy, we're beginning to see the fallout of those principles of DEI, or the elimination of departments, when it should truly be embedded in the fabric of just exactly what you explained, how you do, how you debate, the thought process of that, everybody having that voice, right? And we all know, being in leadership teams, just because there's a voice doesn't mean that's the decision, but at least you are heard. And creating an infrastructure for that, I think, is something to applaud. So kudos to you, and to the CEO, and to ESPN for creating a culture that values that, because that is key. Now, you are obviously, I hate to state the obvious, Captain Obvious, a very busy man. How do you make time for all those children and for yourself? And what activities and hobbies do you enjoy when you're off the clock?
Well, it's unfortunate because, I'm a natural insomniac. I've never slept much.
Oh, wow.
So, that opens up a lot more time. I get up very early. It allows me to take care of a whole bunch of stuff. It allows me to think. I mean, those are the times I think I actually do my best work. My team laughs at me constantly because many of the things that I lean into are things that occur to me sort of when I'm in this half sleep state. I mean, it's really, that's when have insight. Things I love. I really very much try to stay active. Um, People laugh at me, but like, my main sport is Peloton. My other great love is, for anybody who knows me, is, I love to sail, and I, love sailing in all of its expressions, from sailing uh, little dinghies to larger craft, and take great pride in my ability to do that.
Tell us more about sailing. What is it about sailing that is, I guess, because I'm talking about finding that downtime, that space. Tell us more about it, and what it allows within you and for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to explain, I think, to someone who hasn't experienced it. But the moment you turn off the motor and you're really just being propelled along by the wind, it's this transformative thing. I'd say really corny things like you feel one with nature and all this, but it's like this idea of movement in beautiful settings that always have a changed perspective. When I'm on the Hudson River, New York looks very, very different than when I'm buried in the concrete canyon, walking along. So sailing always gives you a very unique perspective. It gives you this freedom of isolation in a way, because it's you and your crew, and generally, even on the Hudson, which is a very, very busy waterway, nobody else. There's a silence on the water that is astounding. I'm halfway across in the Hudson, and none of the din and noise or anything of New York is apparent from there. And it builds very special personal connections with people. At times it's difficult, it's challenging, it can be dangerous, um, and to um, really experience and overcome those things with people together builds incredible bonds. And those are all the things I truly love.
I love it. Yeah, I really wanted us to experience it. I have a feeling that someone will be sailing. I am seeing all the love. Do you see all the
Yeah,
love emojis coming up?
I'm proud of my, I'm proud that I've converted many. One of my
Yes, you're
colleagues,
converting people into
one of my
sailing.
colleagues actually went out and got certified and has more certifications than I have.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
since she was because she enjoyed it so much.
Mary is
Mer-
asking silence on the Hudson.
it's kind of a remarkable thing. I mean, you have to delete the ferries, that are always rushing by, but just the level of din and noise, when you're in the middle of Hudson is just so much less than kind of what's on shore. It's actually kind of striking, and it's amazing. You can be so close to Manhattan and yet so far away at the same time. Yeah.
I love it. So,
And
Alec,
and I guess the other thing that I'd add, and this is one that I've come to later in life,
yeah.
is, look, my family shares a history of many families. We came to these shores under arduous and unfortunate circumstances. And one of the goals that I have, a personal goal I have, is to skipper a craft back to the shores of the place we came from, which is Africa. And in
Wow.
some ways, that's a very powerful thing for me emotionally, because I think it's kind of reclaiming
Yeah.
this history, right? It came in very unfortunate circumstances. So my ability we sailed here under very unfortunate circumstances. And so, my ability and capacity to sail back, to me, like, somehow kind of reclaims all of that, somehow heals that. So there's a completeness to that. And that's one of my very quiet goals, like on my bucket list.
Oh, Mark, that is
Yeah.
so powerful. Oh my gosh, the imagery of how we came, but the reality of the freedom to go on your own terms. Oh, okay. All right. That. Thank you for that. Thank you. That is so powerful. Wow, I'm just taking it in. Sorry,
Yep.
everybody. I'm taking it in. So, oh wow. Okay, we have about 15 or so minutes left, and I cannot overlook the fact that so many people talked about you being a mentor and you giving back. What advice do you have for those looking to break into the sports media, into technology, and how do they find mentors? Actually, before that, what role did mentors play in your growth, Mark, that made you be so intentional about mentoring others?
Well, several things. I mean, there's so many different forms of mentorship across so many dimensions of life and relationships. And I think sometimes people focus a little bit too much on the ones that are directly in line with what they want. So, this classic idea of mentorship is, I'm going to find kind of the most senior person in the thing that I'm doing to mentor me. And that's a very valuable and useful thing. And I try to do that for everyone who asks that of me. But over time, and people have heard me, I beat this one to death, um, is I don't think there's any mentoring more important than peer mentorship, because, we all come up together. I found that there's this almost bootstrapping effect where, as my career's progressed, some of my peer mentors have moved ahead, moved behind, and we've pulled one another up. Jimmy Pitara is like a great example of that, where we kind of started in very close proximity, and as he's grown and as I've grown, we've grown together, and it's been a
Mhm,
very a really wonderful relationship over a very, very long period of time.
mhm.
I think the other thing is just this, just real authenticity and, real connection, which I think sometimes gets lost in formal mentorship. Mentorship takes a very long time I feel, um, to perfect.
I agree.
So I've had people I've mentored now probably for 15 years, and it's only now that we're really kind of hitting our stride. Um, because, you know, having that personal connection, having that mutual accountability, you know, takes time, and that's the thing. And I'm not saying, oh, wait 15 years, but my message is to be valuable. It's based on authenticity. It takes a long time. You have to have real, actual connection. And this is my second thing that I really always lean into is, and it's like Booker T. Washington said, you know, cast down your bucket where you are, right? And that's and that's actually a sailing metaphor because, I think the story, I don't remember exactly, but the story is the sailors are dying of thirst anchored at the mouth of a river, and they're struggling to figure out how to get water, but all they needed to do was just cast their bucket down and take up some of the fresh water that's flowing out of the mouth of the river. And so I think that's often missed. It's like sometimes people feel you have to go to there's a belief that you have to go to exceptional lengths to build mentoring relationships. And sometimes those best relationships are just the people around you. People often come to me and say, wow, how do I get into sports media? Like, well, let's start where you are. Like, start with your fandom. I see people, I'm a Chelsea fan, and there are people that the network has never heard of who publish on YouTube, and I watch them religiously, and they have a following of 1,500 people, right? But I just like their particular take. So there's always that opportunity. There are local and youth sports leagues. There are all these things. It doesn't seems a little counterintuitive that those could lead to something, but like driving into these passions, casting your bucket down where you are, and getting engaged with things around you, can be as powerful a path as, connecting with a high-level person at ESPN. So one should never overlook that. And as I said, your peers are really your best mentors. They're going to be with you. You will come up together. You will aid and comfort one another. You will advise one another over long periods of time.
I wholeheartedly second that. I want to give a quick story of this peer mentorship. And it really begins with your ability to listen. So that's key, and be able to take feedback. My son, I think we talked about this before we got on, played tennis competitively. Now, obviously, anytime you're fixing your stroke, and it's a very technical sport for those who understand it, you would think, go to the coach, go to the coach. And one time, one of his buddies, whom they've grown up together, and so they're always pushing each other, they play each other in competitions. That's a small world. And his buddy walks up to him after he had played a match, and he was down on himself. And he said, hey, buddy, can I give you some advice? Get mentally tough. You're too weak. I saw you change your technique every time the shot didn't go in. It's working. You have the right shot. Nobody else, I could have said that a million times. It would not have had the impact it did, that he got that feedback from a peer that he respected, that he knew, that could really give him that feedback. And it changed his game. It completely changed his game. I wish I could have paid him all that money that I was paying for the coaching sessions, but that's an aside. I have a question for you from Betty, who's saying, for someone interested in transitioning into a career in the sports industry, what steps would you recommend they take to position themselves as a strong candidate? That's one. And are there any specific qualifications, experiences, or soft skills that tend to be highly valued? Thank you, Betty.
Yeah, and I presume this is true, and it's it's kind of obvious, painfully so, but there has to be passion in the product. Like, so what I believe that people have passion in process or passion in product, right? And passion in process is, for example, someone just passionately and essentially a quant, and they don't care whether they're doing, analyzing derivatives or optimizing supply chains, right? They have a passion commitment for that process that's doing that thing. And some people like myself have passion for product, right? It's infinitely satisfying to me um, to have an output that is even merely related to music or entertainment or sports, because I just love to see the other end of people. And yeah, so there's a commitment to, so it's a love of process versus a love of product, right? And you have to, one, decide which you are, and then two, if it's love of product, you have to make sure that you have real passion for that thing. So I would say, I would start with uh, a true passion for sport or a sport, and that's really the germ of all things. And then the second thing is really skills acquisition. I think um, sometimes it best served by like how can I put this, non-obvious skills. So one of the ways I got into the music business, which led me generally into entertainment and sports, was I did mergers and acquisitions. And at the time, I encountered the general counsel of a record company called Polygram, which doesn't exist anymore through all these successive mergers. And I didn't know how to do artist deals or music deals, but I knew how to do mergers and acquisitions. And she said, hey, we're doing more and more mergers. Why don't you come on? You can lead this mergers and acquisitions practice, and at the same time, I'll show you how to do like the artist deals and the real hardcore music side of it. And so it's that ability to kind of meld skills that were just evolving in that industry. I think the same thing is true for sports. When I start thinking about, geez, I think AI is really going to be important. I think some of these immersive volumetric experiences, those are going to become important. So, so then I would believe an accelerated way is to kind of acquire these skills adjacencies that are new to the space and kind of offer to bring those in, right? I mean, I think if you beat down the established path, oftentimes, it's a lot more difficult, right? And the other thing I would say, which is, sports is a very broad set of things. All the way, from working at leagues and conferences and league office to working at a media company like ESPN, and a lot of things in between. And one, I think it's important to kind of understand which piece of it you want to be in, because it's virtually a universe of activities that seem related, but kind of share the sport, but are really radically different undertakings in different environments. Mm-hmm.
Very, very detailed question. And Betty, thank you. I hope that was really helpful. That was very insightful. Yes, she said, thank you so much. So insightful. Appreciate that, Betty. So Mark, we're going to get into the rapid fire questions. Are you ready? All right.
I may not be rapid response, but I will try.
No worries. Let's go. So what's the one skill that every executive should possess?
I asked that question of Bob Iger, and he said optimism. It took me a second. I figured it out. It's not Pollyannishly believing that everything's okay or telling everybody that it is. It's your belief that no matter what the obstacle is, you can overcome it.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it. How do you handle disagreements or conflicts within your team?
I've been blessed because I have a team where the culture is such and the personalities are such, the people are such that we don't really have much of that. Again, it's back to the Jimmy's framework of discuss, debate, decide, align that I think really, really helps, because everybody knows we're in that framework. It gives us room to disagree, have different opinions, but it also commits everybody this idea of, well, hey, once we figure this out, like we're just all going to get on board, and we're all going to go forward together. And so I think while there may be tensions or conflicts in the short term, I think there's a real understanding that, hey, once there's resolution, once there's direction, we're just going to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I like that. How do you approach risk management in your decision-making process?
Yeah, so that's a tricky one, particularly in innovation. I tell you, we accept a lot of risk. And we try to do so in a thoughtful way. And we also understand if we're not regularly subject to criticism, if we don't regularly fail, if people don't regularly tell us that we're doing the wrong things, and we're not responsibly custodians of the resources we have access to, then we're probably not doing the right stuff, right? I mean, my mantra is we should come in every day and try to get fired or promoted, because it's kind of the same thing, right? In the sense that, if we're not pushing that place, if we're just headed for steady state, then we will never get where we need to be, right? And so we should be taking the kind of risks and thoughtful risks and responsible risks that, either you bask in the glory and good things happen, or everybody says, yeah, we had enough of you.
Well, Mark, we have 1 minute to go. And so I'm going to ask, what's your favorite song and why?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's really hard to say that without, revealing a lot about my age and the background. But I would say this is bad, people. It's bad. I'm really sorry. It's probably One Nation Under Groove by Parliament Funkadelics.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and it's not just the music. It's not that Bootsy Collins just lays down this kind of irresistible groove. It's the multi-textured nature of this thing, and it's this seemingly simple kind of dance song that honestly is polyrhythmic and very complex. I mean, it just has this complexity, but that results in this very accessible simplicity and danceability. And in some ways, I just think it's peak, and it really combines produce piece, but also, there's a lot of improvisation that's embedded in there. So there's just all these dimensions, and again, it combines elements of rock and jazz, funk, and actually, predicted many of the things that would happen in hip hop. So I don't know. It's just like perfection to me, and I hear that I have to move some part of my body,
Oh
I
man,
think it's genius.
that should have been my intro song next
And
time.
if it's not that, I mean, the other answer, which is very weird too, is Keith Jarrett's Colm concert, which means so much to me because it's expressiveness through constraints. Short version, long stories. They delivered a messed up piano to him with the Colm concert. The sustain pedal didn't work. Large parts of the keyboard were out of tune. And so as he improvised his piece, he had to account for all those things. But those are the very things that made this piece transcendent. I mean, and I think one of the greatest pieces of music, ever performed or composed. I have listened to that album over and over and over and over and over again for many, many years. And I can't get tired of it. And every time I listen to it, I find something new, something that inspires me in a different way.
Oh my goodness, I love that. I cannot believe it has been 60 minutes.
Oh,
Mark, thank you.
Thank
you.
you. This is so much fun.
It was so much fun. I just looked and I had the same reaction. I just didn't voice it. I was like, oh, we're in time. I want to thank you for the gift of your time. Thank you for the gift of coming and sharing yourself, your hobbies, the wonderful nuggets and insights that you've been able to share with our audience. Our audience, thank you for the lovely questions. Thank you for staying engaged. The chat feature has been blowing up. I was trying not to look so I could stay focused on the conversation. You've all been very engaged. Mark, I hope we can get to do this again. I think we had so much ground to cover, and I would love to know about the sailing dream as well. I would literally just do another session just about the sailing, and hopefully that happens soon for you. Thank you again. We would love to have you. Thank you for your leadership. Congratulations on the work that you're doing and the many individuals you're pulling with you. That was such an inspiring video for us to watch. To our audience, thank you for joining NAMIC. I am your host, Anne-Marie Burton. It has been a pleasure spending this 60 minutes with you, and we'll see you at the NAMIC Annual Conference in October. Until then, God bless. Bye-bye. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.